Yeah, so let's do a quick introduction as we run across then. Okay. Do you want to kick us off?
Good evening. My name is Radhika Bansal. I work at Accenture. I'm a Salesforce MVP and a Lightning champion, but a Dreamforce attendee also. And it was great to attend this Dreamforce, and I'll tell you more about it in further news.
Hi, I'm Peter Chittum. So my official title is Senior Director of Developer Relations. I lead developer relations here in EMEA. I also lead the developer evangelist team both in North America and here in Europe. This was my 10th Dreamforce on the trot, all working for Salesforce. So I'll leave it at that for now.
How do you rank it out of the 10?
Honestly, I think it was my favorite.
Best one.
No, I'm not actually not even. That's no BS actually. I as far as how good a time I had, like this was probably the best one.
Well, my name is Amnon Kruvi. I have recently opened my own ISV, and this is my first Dreamforce. So my point of view is hopefully a bit different to what most people have gone for. We'll see how it goes.
So I'm Jose Zacarias. I'm a technical consultant at Brightgen, and it was my first time at Dreamforce. Quite an interesting one, to be honest. And I think every one of us probably had a different experience of Dreamforce. It's such a big event, and with so many talks that I think probably none of us had the same experience. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Cool, thank you. So I think first of all, I would like to kick us off by asking which of the sessions you had as your kind of your the one to attend, and did you get to it, and were you able to get in? And if so, what was it about, and what did you make from it? What can you share with us from that? And then who wants to start?
I guess I'll start. So I had two sessions that I really wanted to attend. One was the keynote, and I was able to get in. The other one was Obama, and there was such a queue, and I had, that morning, I had lots of things that just happened, and I found myself not really able to stand for hours in a queue. So I had to miss that. But I did really enjoy the keynote. What I loved most about it, surprisingly, was actually the people who tried to interrupt it. There were a few people there who tried to interrupt, and Mark Benioff just kind of stunned me with his mature reaction to it. The way and it seemed like he prepared for it. He gave them 30 seconds to speak, and they didn't really do anything with it. So, in my opinion, he came out on top there. I really enjoyed that.
Next one. So my talk that I really wanted to see was with two of the product owners, senior product owners at Salesforce. And that was on mainly how Salesforce were developing and what was the development process. It was really interesting, to be honest. A little bit of insight into what their development process is, how they achieve continuous integration, continuous development, and also very interesting to see what the challenges are. For example, one of the big challenges they had was that they have approximately 10 million unit tests, which is crazy, and that's across all of the clouds. As far as I'm concerned, like it's they have one big one, which is the core, and then they have a bunch of other heads that they work on, and it was interesting how they had to develop, for example, a test prioritization tool to understand which tests to run for each release, and how that allowed them to develop with confidence every release, even if it's a hotfix. So yeah, that was my go-to.
So one of the sessions that happens at every Dreamforce and every Trailhead DX is called Meet the Developers. And I try to get to that one. I didn't make it this year. But if you're ever there, put it on your short list. They added a new one recently. I don't know if it was just for this Dreamforce or if they also had it at Trailhead DX called Meet the Makers, which is the kind of the same thing but for product managers. And then there was also a great one with Wade and Zane Turner. And it was called A Candid Conversation about Salesforce DX. That I would have loved to make that one too. The way my Dreamforce goes as a Salesforce employee is busy, 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 busy. Look up, what can I do right now? And so that was sort of how it happened for me. But the one session I went to that to me really stood out, there were actually two of these on this track, and it was called the Off the Grid track, which tells you something right there about their marketing. It was very small, but these were small panels with customers and implementers. So one of them was the Ladies Be Architects founders. So Gemma was there, so was Charlie, and they talked about kind of what is the Ladies Be Architects and the value of that. The other one on this track was it was actually about 3 customers that talked about when do you choose to actually build an application, which I found really, really interesting. I work for Salesforce. Our marketing is, of course, always you should build an application. So to sit in on a session where it was 3 customers, sorry about that.
For you.
Yeah, 3 customers, answering the question, when should I build that application? I found that really insightful, particularly around, there was a whole discussion around how do you build out your developer workforce, which in developer relations is something we talk about and think about a lot. So to me, it was a standout, unfortunately unrecorded session.
This time Dreamforce was very overwhelming, as if it is not always. But I felt like it would be something different than before, because this time it was my second. But it was quite tedious. And apart from the developer keynote, announcement of local host coding, blockchain usage in Salesforce, and all that stuff, I attended one local session also on platform session about what mistakes we do in our JavaScripts. And these are some common things which we generally do, and there are some blogs written on it, but it was a very good presentation by Aditya Nag of Salesforce, who presented it, and it was presented twice, at least I saw it twice, him presenting it, because it was such a hit session. But apart of being technical, the Barack Obama session was really great. I really liked his insanely humorous attitude, and his respect for his wife, I wish every lady gets such a partner, not because he is ex-president, but because of his nature. He was admiring Michelle on the stage a lot. And also he said about the 2 teachings that he always give to his daughters, which was whenever you are doing something, just think about 2 main things. Is it useful, and is it kind? I found it really impactful, and I'll always remember it. Apart from all these things, there was one more thing, which is like mindfulness session given by the monks, which is conducted every day, but I got a chance to attend only on the last day. I should admit that it was the most relaxing part of my whole Dreamforce journey, and I would recommend everyone who goes to Dreamforce should attend at least once, because we are so engaged in our day-to-day life that we forget to take care of ourselves and about our mental health, which Emilia Clarke also emphasized on it. And to attend that session was a really insightful thing for me. So that's it.
Cool, thank you. I think so the sessions there are so varied, right? It covers the broad spectrum of what you could want from a conference. Is there any questions from anyone here?
Rob?
Oh, there is. Rob, yes.
So, obviously, everyone's kind of during Dreamforce is on social media, very excited, very positive, catching up with friends and that. But I think realistically, what were the things you found disappointing at Dreamforce?
Are we allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, of
We're all friends here.
Of course you
I think it's about setting people's expectations if they haven't been before. What was a challenge for you maybe? I know a lot of people say be prepared to do a lot of walking, a lot of standing, that type of. But for you, each personally, and Peter, you're not exempt as a Salesforce employee. What did you find that didn't meet your expectations at Dreamforce?
I can start. So I'll answer that in two ways. I think everybody who attends Dreamforce will agree that you can't do everything that you want to do. So I mean, so anybody who hasn't attended, like, set your expectations now. I tend to underfill my schedule, just so that I don't experience less of that, and also so I have more sort of free opportunities to kind of experience things that are a bit more sort of off the cuff. To me, the hardest part about Dreamforce, I'll put it this way, and so in that way it was a bit of a disappointment. So we had a whole display on robots, and there was one particular robot that, so Philippe Ozil, who works for me, he is an excellent programmer. It took him days to try and get it to work the way that it did. But it taught us a really important lesson, which is don't build enterprise-grade demos with children's toys. So I guess that was a positive takeaway from that. But that was hard. It was hard for the whole team, actually. We pulled through it, and it's great to know that you have good people that you're working with. But still, it would have been nicer if that had been smoother.
I found that inside the main expo, there was a bit of a problem getting proper food and drink. So there were restaurants outside that you could go to, but I found myself mostly inside the main areas. It was only later that I discovered, like really on the last day, that I discovered that in all the other hotels, the breakout lounges, if you will, they had all these excellent things that were just there waiting for people, and I guess I didn't know about
I
it.
think it is even in a campground. The two sides of the campground, they were distributing lunches, even in the evening snacks all the time.
Well, so on the first day, for example, I left the keynote at about 12 o'clock. I discovered that lunch was served at 11:30, and that 95% of it was gone, with the exception of the vegetarian chili. Now, I don't mind vegetarian food, but this vegetarian chili was not very appetizing. And the selection of drinks was mainly restricted to flavored water. So I was a bit disappointed in that. But once you found the different lounges and the types of food that they had, you kind of knew where to scrounge. I felt like a zombie apocalypse. You kind of have to find the food for the day.
So do you think with that then, as a first timer, that something like a newbie's guide to Dreamforce from a logistics sense might have helped?
Infinitely.
Okay.
They exist, though.
Yeah.
There's at least 10 of them, like, on people's blogs.
You
So
need to know where to find them, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Who here has been at London World Tour? Most of you. So I would say, like, if it's pretty much the same. So food is served in certain areas of the place, but most people get it. Sometimes you don't get exactly what you fancy. But I would say, like, food was not like something that you had food. And in the end, you.
As you can see, I'm not starving.
Yeah, right. If you want good food, don't rely on like the things that Salesforce supply, even though there is some really good ones. For me, most disappointment part was exactly what you say. Like, I built my schedule, even though people told me, like, you're gonna have a lot of queues. I built it like, yeah, I'm gonna do Obama, I'm gonna do Tim Cook, and I was in the queue for Tim Cook for 3 hours, I guess, and I didn't make it. So, yeah, if you're gonna go there, my advice is, if you really want to go to a certain talk, that it's probably gonna be a lot of people there, just go early. I heard people for Obama were there like before 5 a.m.
2:45 a.m. is when I saw a tweet.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
Exactly.
So I'll just add, like, it's a crowd of 150k people. Okay, so you can imagine.
170.
Yeah, now 170. So it's very easy to get lost over there.
Yeah.
So whatever session you want to attend, you need to really plan it very meticulously, very beforehand, and make your schedule like that. This is first thing. Next thing is like if you don't know where the food is, so first you will struggle, and that is definitely the one thing. And one thing I also found disappointing is like in the last 2 days, not the first 2 days, last 2 days. So it has been made open to the public, and a lot of people are coming only for goodies. So somebody collecting scarves, some toys and all these things, and they have nothing to do with Salesforce. They is not interested about Salesforce at all. So straight people come and they take the goodies. So
This is true. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and-
I think some people got like free passes for just Expo,
Yes.
or
In the last
even if
few
it was discounted. And there were some people like in the last couple of days that were there just for that.
Yeah.
But I would say that I really enjoyed, and this can be contrary to most people's because everyone likes some
No,
goodies.
It's very.
But I think it's good that there was less goodies than other conferences that I've went, and indeed it was harder to get them, because at the end of the day, we all accumulate a lot of those things, and we don't really do anything useful with them. So
There was actually a
Website for that.
Yeah, that's right. There was actually a really big decrease in the amount of swag, and so internally we had to justify everything that we were going to actually give away as swag, that it would meet the sustainability goals of the conference. So like nobody had stickers, for instance, and every other Dreamforce you've been to before this, for the last 5 years at least, every single booth would have its own Trailhead character or its own take on that or that sort of thing. So actually, I think I was expecting to hear more disappointment about that. I'm sure some people were, and I did hear a little bit, but I was expecting to hear more disappointment about that. But I was pretty pleased that the conference goers tended to sort of accept that as a goal and kind of go with it.
I think because their messaging of the why was so strong,
Yeah.
people got it.
Well, in all fairness, there were a lot of stickers going around there, not by Salesforce, but by independent vendors, independent sticker vendors or ISVs, who were handing them. And there was plenty of swag from the actual expo booths. So I came home with a suitcase packed with stuff. And also, if you went to the shopping center nearby, there was an Amazon pop-up shop that was actually giving away a free toy from a certain brand, which was actually kind of good.
Nice.
but the way it worked, it was like a quest, and you had to complete certain steps to get stuff.
There was a question back.
I understand that this is a big event for Salesforce, and also I understand it's expensive to attend, am I right? Okay. Well, for the amount of money that you put on the table, why don't you get like a guide, or like a journey where you can book yourself if you want to attend the meetings that you were mentioned about.
You mean like a Dreamforce trail?
Sorry?
Like a trail?
Like a journey, like when you attend somewhere and you pay so much money and you expect so much from Salesforce because they're on the top, right? I'm thinking that if I attend there, you have entries and you can book in, and then you don't have to wait for like 3 hours or whatever.
Well, so we do create like trail maps and that sort of thing for every persona that attends the Dreamforce event. So whether you're a developer, admin, architect, salesperson, CTO, the marketing team creates what they call a trail map, and that gives you suggestions for which talks. But the reality is, Barack Obama is always going to be oversubscribed. So there are certain talks that no matter what you do, some people are not going to be able to attend. For those talks, we do overflows. So, and I realized the Obama one was communicated very, very, very late. However, if you weren't able to get into the room for Barack Obama, for instance, every other keynote room actually was open so that you could actually see the live or experience it live, even though you weren't in person with him. Yeah, Does that answer your question?
And I will just add that for some of the talks, you can actually enroll into it, and you will have your seat guaranteed up to 15 minutes before the talk. If you didn't appear before 15 minutes before, then it's free for whoever is waiting. But you do have the possibility in some of the talks to enroll and have your seat guaranteed.
Yeah, and those ones we only do 80% pre-enrollment, so we always leave 20% for walk-ins. So we do everything we can, really, to try and make sure everybody can get as best they can to the sessions they want to. I've been doing this for 10 years, like I said, and the event team tries really, really hard to try and get it as right as they can, but in the end, some people miss out.
So should we switch from the negatives to the positives? Please. For a bit, I think we should. So I was watching from afar, just with a scotch, sitting watching my laptop, trying to get all the goodness. There were a few announcements that came through. So I want to know, of all the things that came through with their admin or hopefully dev base, what were the takeaways do you think that people in this room can look forward to either in the near future or they can use right now in terms of the dev side? I don't know if Radhika, when you hit this one first.
Okay. So who is excited about blockchain? No one?
Not everyone at once.
Okay. Well, everyone thinks that they have heard about blockchain and they don't know what is blockchain. So it was explained very clearly there, and also about the usage and how easy it would be to use in Salesforce. I actually also gave a presentation on usage of blockchain in Salesforce, and it was really good. I had a good good amount of attendees there. So for me, it was a good thing to watch. Apart from it, I'm so looking forward for next session because I'm quite excited about Lightning development, and I have few web developers in my team who was asking me the other day itself before going to Dreamforce, how can I do locally tested? I mean, I said, no, it's not possible, sorry. But now I gave them the good news that they can, and so that was also a very good catch for me.
Well, I'm actually more excited about an admin feature that was revealed. Last year, I think it was my very first dev group, and someone from Salesforce was talking about the ability to add fields to the Lightning record page directly, which also meant that you could set filters of whether or not they're visible. And I've been waiting for like a whole year and a half. Might have been this guy over here who actually mentioned it. I've been waiting for a whole year and a half for this feature to be officially announced as part of the roadmap. The reason I love this feature so much is because it means I can develop less. I need to build less custom things and be able to utilize the platform more. And at the end of the day, I think that's why we all work on the platform. If we just wanted to develop everything, we would just open up, an AWS account and start from scratch.
When is it coming? When this feature it will be live?
I think it's sometime next year, end of next year, if I remember correctly. I don't remember exactly when, but I think sometime end of next year. But I'll need to. Yeah. And actually, Rob, you just whispered Heroku there. I understand that Salesforce and AWS are now best buddies, right? They had like an AWS booth in there and training on Trailhead for AWS. So, hey.
There's also a strong relationship with Azure now, so it's hedging the bets a bit.
Hey.
Are we? Sorry, but for me, local development was awesome. To be honest, I was actually working in a Lightning Web component as I was going there, and as you might know, flight is really long there, and I didn't have any way to look at what I was doing, what was the result. So when I saw that, I was like, it was very personal probably to me at that time, but I really felt like it was very good. And I will say also the data masking, if you work with big customers, especially on like that have more sensible data, data masking is very good. And also the idea that you can have data policies there that will invalidate your user access it even if it's on a report, for example. For me, it's a great functionality.
Does everyone know what the data masking announcement was? Or do we want to cover that quickly?
So if you have, for example, a sandbox now, and for example, you have a partial or full sandbox, you can copy some of your data to the sandbox, and that is good for your testing. It facilitates a lot. But if you were in an environment where you could not use, for example, customer data to do that, you will have to find other ways to import that data, or create a class to data mask the data that you had, like either if that was emails, names, phone numbers. And what it allows you is to actually mask all that data selectively. You can select what data you want to do. And also on the policy side, if you want to, for example, to a developer to have, or I say a developer, but this can be applied to any role, honestly, to have access to certain fields and not to others. You can select those and create a policy to disable the access for them, even on reports. If they were to build a report with that field, it will draw an error, for example. Yep.
So when you say masking, it's like obfuscating personal details, that type of stuff, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
anonymizing them.
Anonymised,
Which
that's
is,
the word, yeah.
I think it looks quite funny. So really clever. So it will recognise the type of field and then give you something that's lifelike, but not that. So if it's a telephone number, you'd get something in the same kind of format, but not the value.
With a 555 prefix.
Yeah, look really smart. Cool. I'm ready, Peter.
So for me, one of the really exciting things is more of a theme around all the things that are going on around open source. So, we obviously announced Lightning Web Components open source at Trailhead DX, but then, we just open sourced the base components, and I think that initially that's only going to be for, so you can see the code and, you can directly file issues against the Git repo. But even things like the cloud information model, did anyone hear about that announcement? So this is an effort that Salesforce is working with several industry partners to sort of create an archetype data schema for enterprise applications. The whole purpose of which is to make it so that it's a lot easier to do integrations between enterprise applications. So a company using the cloud information model could literally download the DDL script to run against the SQL database and just use that like right out of the box. And it contains all the different tables and that sort of thing to represent different entities that you might actually use in an enterprise application. And again, even though we're one of the partners on this project, it's sort of, Salesforce is trying very hard to, become a good citizen of open source and open standards. And I think we've always been good from the standpoint of what we've done in engineering, but I think we're seeing more things that you and I can actually be out there touching and affecting and impacting. So that excites me, just generally speaking. And Evergreen's cool too, so I'm kind of excited about trying that out a little bit too.
So can I ask about a question about cloud information model? Is that a standard that exists outside of Salesforce, and Salesforce are trying to adhere to that standard? How does that work?
So you can go to cloudinformationmodel.org. I believe that's the URL, and it's meant to be a standard. And so it's ourselves, AWS, and I'm forgetting the other partner. But so there's three basically founding partners of this data standard, and we're as we speak trying to get other partners to sign on board. Yeah, does that?
What's the outcome though?
Oh well, so it's just a standardized schema for business entities. So in a database.
Is that by vertical, like by different industries?
No, it's meant to be more generalized. There are a few things in there that look like they could support certain verticals better than others. As of now, it's meant to be very much a general purpose schema. If it takes off and, the more support that that project gets, you could certainly see it going in that direction eventually.
There were two
A couple of questions, yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I just wanted to know, are these sessions are available now to watch online?
I can answer that question.
Oh, yeah,
So it takes about 2 weeks to convert all the sessions. We recorded every breakout session. Theater sessions were not recorded this year.
Yeah, but they are starting to roll out already.
Yeah.
Yes, Bash.
Yeah, so I've attended probably 7 or 8 Dreamforces, and every year there's something that's surprising, whether it be a session or part of Dreamforce is really surprising. And for example, in a session, leveraging Alexa in an enterprise environment was surprising, but really useful and thoughtful way of leveraging both platforms together. Something else completely unrelated to sessions where for a while there was a big sort of Will I Am and Black Eyed Peas influence in Dreamforce. Black Eyed Peas playing all the time. Will I Am having speeches that were just completely random. This year, did you find anything that sort of caught you off guard or was surprising or fun in that way to you?
To be honest, of course, Salesforce is always about sustainability and equality. But I think they stepped it up in this conference. I don't know about other years. It was my first time again. But the fact that every talk at this year's Dreamforce had to touch on sustainable development goals, SDGs, and that for me surprised me. For some people, for some talks, it was a little bit harder to go that way, but I really liked it, and I think on the talks that were done, having, for example, the director for the UN for Women was awesome to have her there. Great talk actually, and I think on that side it was really good.
Big line indeed. I didn't go for it.
Me neither.
But since you pointed out Alexa, I want to tell you guys: have you ever heard about Einstein Alexa? That was pictured there, like a model of Einstein, and it has having its own Alexa device in it, and you can ask what's my turnout or how is my opportunity going on, and what all things related to your Salesforce to that particular device.
And that sort of syncs up with Einstein's voice, I'm guessing?
Yes.
So can you buy the actual Einstein, or is that a? Or
Yeah,
you just buy an Alexa,
there
you've
were
got a 3D
devices.
printer and Einstein to sit on the top.
Both of them. But yeah, it would be easily available soon. So that was a good thing, funny thing too.
On that, the thing that most disappointed me about that Einstein is that it did not speak. Surprising is that it did not speak in a German accent.
Oh come on!
Come on,
Expectations.
just imagine how cool it would be if it spoke in an Einstein, classic accent.
Oh, Renee talked to it in a German accent, so.
Einstein, how are my opportunities doing? It's relative.
Right, we should move on. Are there any more questions from the floor? People must know what's going on. No. So I want to know. So I've never been to Dreamforce, and I didn't go to the last two TDXs. Should I go to a Dreamforce, or should I go to a TDX India, or the next one in the US?
TDX India.
Yeah.
Not because I'm from India, but
Yeah. What would you think?
okay. So TDX are basically confined for developers. If it's held in San Francisco, it's only in Moscone West, only having business developers, business people, and it's more of a Salesforce understanding and more of technical thing. And why TDX India? Because it's happening for the first time in India, and India is a hub for developers and people like that. So it's gonna be a great opportunity to understand how things work there.
Are you going?
Yep, I'm going. But yes, TDX in San Francisco is also good.
When is it India?
19th and 20th of December.
Well, I think it would really depend on the reason for going. So a big part of why I went to Dreamforce this year was because, yes, there's a lot to learn at Dreamforce and a lot of sessions and a lot of interesting things to see, but there's also a lot of people. And and the people are as big a part, meeting them, making those personal connections over in the States of people who I never had an opportunity to meet before. And more than that, the people who were running the booths at the expo were Salesforce employees. And not just any Salesforce employees, there were solution engineers. There were R&D managers. The ones in the robot booth were 2 R&D managers. Where in the world are you going to be able to grab some one-on-one time asking someone, so what do you do at Salesforce? Oh, I'm an R&D manager.
I was
Right.
shocked to see Einstein R&D manager there explaining on blockchain there. Is he seriously here? His name is Prithvi. I don't know his surname, but he was there for a few minutes.
And from my perspective, specifically because I just launched an ISV, it gives me an opportunity to talk to solution engineers who are hopefully going to be my best friends over the next decade or so. But still, it does give me that opportunity not just to introduce myself and what I do, but also to learn about what is going on in the market, what sort of work they need people to make. So from my perspective, that was a huge part of going. I'm not sure if you'll get the same at TDX. I'll be honest, I've never been, but that was a really good thing at Dreamforce.
I think, Chris, you had a point.
Yeah. So for Dreamforce, there's so many groups at Salesforce, marketing, admins really overpower the developers, and they're actually pushing a lot of our amazing features to Trailhead DX. So if you want the cool stuff, it's totally Trailhead DX for developers, and I think that's where we're going to be more encouraged to go, because it's actually getting harder and harder for us as developers to attend Dreamforce. You still will get the attention of talking right to the developers and the product managers at Trailhead DX. It's a smaller event, but there's still the same people are still there. They still need people to power those booths, and it's still the awesome people. So yeah.
Cool. Well, yes.
Yeah, I think another angle on that as well is if you're dependent on your employer sending you to one of these events, and they've only got the budget to send you to one of them, if you're a developer or an architect, or certainly on that technical track, they're going to be looking for the maximum return on investment. Okay, what do we get out of it for spending a few grand on you going to one of these events? I think if on that technical track, you're going to get far more technical value and things that you can bring back and implement out of Trailhead DX than you are from Dreamforce. It's a close one, but I think if you're a dev or an architect, I think Trailhead DX is far more focused on that piece.
Yeah,
Let me just say something. And I was talking this with some people here. It's as Salesforce developers, and it's very specific to Salesforce developers. I know there is other technologies there that probably are the same, but it's just that we are developers, but we don't just develop, right? We have communication with the client. We have so many other specifics that we do as Salesforce developers. And on that aspect, I think that Dreamforce is a broader conference, and it's always going to be like the biggest Salesforce event. Trailhead DX, it's a developer-specific conference. And so I don't totally agree with you on return on investment, to be honest, because I think of you going to Dreamforce, even though you are a developer, you will do more contacts, you will probably get to know more people, and the really important people that you want to know and that you can probably create a chat about and get to know will be always on Dreamforce, and even though you can get some access to them in Trailhead DX.
I'll put a slightly different spin on that. So I don't think you can go wrong either way. I'll say that. So if it comes down to it, and like it's a calendar thing, like this date's going to work better than that one, just go to the one that you can. The thing that you won't get at Trailhead DX is, for the most part, community-led sessions. So Dreamforce, the vast majority of the breakout sessions are actually the community sharing their experience and how they've used Salesforce, whether that's admin, developer, or architect track. At Trailhead DX, the vast majority of sessions, apart from the extracurricular track that we've done the last couple of years, those are all sessions that are Salesforce employees. So they're product managers, developers, development leads, architects, talking about how we've built it. So you have to judge for yourself which one of those is going to be most valuable. The one thing that I would say on the business value of going to Dreamforce is it also depends on what business you're in. Like, are your customers global, or are they here? Are they in the UK? Are they across EMEA? If they're global, I think, yeah, there's probably a lot of value to going to Dreamforce. If they are just UK customers, maybe a little bit less so. Even though we did have a lot of customers, they were really our biggest customers that were going. So if you're serving small, medium-sized businesses, you're not going to find a lot of your customers actually at Dreamforce, and I would take that into account. If you're working for GSI and you're talking to, our global 50 customers, then there's going to be a lot of value going to Dreamforce because the people that are making the decisions are going to be there, and you may be able to step into a meeting where you can actually help out your business to make sure that that deal closes, or that that customer hears the right technical message at the right time, so that they're going to be happy to continue doing what they're doing. So I think that would be something that I would always take into account.
I think one of the takers, I think that I have seen, as you talked about developer session, admin sessions, architect sessions, also in the theaters, you can see a lot of partners come and what's their experiences, digitization and all the things they did. But I think one part that definitely Salesforce can add is like how to sell Salesforce. So
I think those sessions are there, but they're just not in the developer area.
So it's there, but it's very high level thing. I think I can tell you an example, like as for example, like Accenture, or in my company HCL, where we can go and tell people like this is the way you sell a Salesforce solution. Because right now, if you look at the market picture, Salesforce competition is also getting very stiff because they're competing product vendors. They're also coming with a lot of features. So then how you like to differentiate Salesforce and how you can push for Salesforce. So this kind of things, this kind of tricks that you do for like developer session and all this thing. This kind of thing we also need.
It sounds like you'd be submitting a talk for next year.
I think that would be a tough talk to sell in the developer track. I'll be really honest with you.
Yeah, but
so
track you should create.
Well, so I would guess that the partner track has that, and I would just double check with them. And I would, if you have a PAM, then I would talk to them, because I can't tell the partner track people how to run their track. They're going to say you're a developer, but I would talk to your partner account manager. Tell them that, because then they can feed that back to the people who run the partner track.
Okay. You have option at London's Calling too.
Yeah, you can speak at London Schooling on that. Don't forget.
Absolutely.
Right. Is there I think we've got time for one last question, if anyone has one. Yes. That's it.
So based on what you learned and what you experienced at Dreamforce, where do you think Salesforce is going next?
Who wants to take that first? Amnon, you've got a mic in your hand.
Forward-looking statements.
if you've got an opinion, you don't have to, of course.
He's always got one.
Well, I've heard rumors in the past, but the idea of evergreen tends to suggest that Salesforce is trying to break its own limits, maybe put those in the past, allow developers to expand beyond what was normally available up until now, in order to address a different segment of businesses, a larger segment of businesses that's always been there, but kind of got turned off by some of the things that come with cloud computing. I find that, to me, that sounds like a good model forward to address that kind of market segment. Of course, I don't work there. I wouldn't know. That's just kind of how the impression that I'm getting.
Cheers.
I'm talking about large enterprises with lots of processing requirements. I feel that Salesforce wanted to address that with Heroku, but maybe that never really took off. So Evergreen is their next attempt at doing that. And if you're not sure what Evergreen is, it basically lets you run code outside of the platform where you don't have the same limits as you do on the platform.
So it's like tapping into like the serverless container kind of market.
Exactly. You can, but I think the biggest challenge of development with that is data integration. So you either use the API, which has its own limits, or you synchronize the database, which costs you a few thousands per year, and a lot of companies don't want to opt into that. So I think they're trying to break down those barriers.
That sounds like a perfect talk for a later dev group, Evergreen, if anyone's interested in delving in and finding out for us.
Pre-release in spring 2020.
You heard it here. Brilliant. Radhika, what do you think?
Forward-looking statement.
Oh yeah.
Is
We
there a
took the
cost
slide
to
down.
Evergreen?
What's that?
Is there a cost to Evergreen? Or is it
Is that a trick question? It's meant to be elastically scalable, right? So you pay for what you use. That's going to be the pricing model.
So it's not like you're not going to have limits. It's
You pay for what you use, yeah.
Limits you can throw money on. I like those.
There you
kind of
go.
programs,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Salesforce also likes them. Radhika.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that apart from the new features that Salesforce is bringing in its own product, they are also working hard on the acquisitions, which is one of them. One of the latest is Tableau, and we got announcement about it in Dreamforce also. So if I would have been asked that what's the future of Salesforce, I would just say that there is no word better than bright for it, because every time the rise of Salesforce opportunities is growing anywhere in this world, and if there are also dormant countries in which Salesforce is not so prominent, there also Salesforce opportunities are quite high in demand. So the recent acquisitions and the recent development changes, I'm sorry, I'm a developer. I always focus on developer. But all these things are really good for the future of Salesforce.
I know the Salesforce is structured to have to be tenant structure, right? If two businesses they merge together, will Salesforce have a tool to help with the merge of two tenants?
I can talk to you about that after, like in the break or something. I'm happy to chat with you about that. How do I answer this question? What's the question?
Start by the forward-looking statement.
What next? What's next?
Oh, what? Okay.
Yeah.
I have to be a little bit vague, obviously. Yeah, having some inside information. Well, so what I'll say is the two most exciting conversations I had were with the head of product for Flow and the head of product for Apex. I think there's some really exciting things with, so I'm getting a little bit down in the reeds as opposed to more visionary. With Flow, it sounds like there's some exciting things they're doing around being able to switch up when your flow is processing, whether you can actually fire it before or after the actual record is put in.
To update my invocable methods.
So this is, it's something they're looking at, right? The idea of being able to have more control over that, like you do with a trigger, I think that's kind of exciting. And then with Apex, Chris Peterson came from Financial Force. He was an MVP, so he was deeply involved in the community before he joined Salesforce, ran an org and one of our own internal orgs, and then became the Apex product manager. I have a huge amount of confidence in his direction that he's taking Apex. His focus is really around stability and then, iterating and adding new features, which, is slowly starting to come to pass. So like with Switch happening recently, that was something that had been requested for a long, long time. Some of the asynchronous processing that you can do now. I think, so much of what we do as an enterprise developers is around controlling and manipulating how business process happens, and so much of that needs to happen on the back end. Having those two things as like core, well-working features is really, really key. So I have a lot of confidence in kind of the things that they were talking about. So how about that? Oh, and we launched a podcast. I'll put that out, throw that out there as well. So we're going podcast for developers.
I think we've got to wrap up now so we can fit everything else in for this evening. So, if we could have a quick round of applause for our panel, please.